Hello, I'm Brenda Warren, and this is Talk to Me. And today I'm excited to have my guest, Pete Widin, with me. Pete is I want to say this correctly, edible landscape designer and a musician and a local farm activist who found freedom by moving back to his hometown and sinking some deep roots. After hitting a financial rock bottom in 2020, he turned to his backyard to grow his own food and found a whole new world to creative inspiration and opportunity to connect with others and sharing quality meals and nourishing experiences in nature. And Pete's going to tell us all about that today. And I'm excited to have you here on Talk to Me, Pete.
Thank you, Brenda. It's super exciting to be here and share the story as the plant world and the music world and food, they all converge and just have created some pretty amazing experiences just in the past year.
Pete, when we first started talking, I came across you because I saw a video with you walking through a farm talking about elderberry.
Hmm.
And I was very intrigued that a young man like you would move back home and start farming. Could you tell me what precipitated that move?
Yeah, so I lived around the country here in the U.S. For about 10 years and really I still have the adventure bug, but after living in Michigan, I went to college in Michigan, studied
Okay.
ecology, and
Mhm.
landscape architecture, and always been into the edible landscaping piece and wanted to help people in some professional way with that. Then I followed my partner at the time out to Portland, Oregon, and lived a very
Mhm.
Portlandia existence, designing edible landscapes
Okay.
and being very, I don't know. I got so deep into the world of sustainability and like herbal medicine, all these things, and
Mhm.
the Pacific Northwest in a lot of areas is so great for that. There's so many people who have been spending their lives studying, and it's all concentrated in some of those cities and elsewhere around the country. But after a couple of years being in Portland, that was very far away from Minnesota, where I am now, and which is where
Mhm.
I'm from. I live in my hometown, right on the border of Wisconsin, and I was just like, man, it's too hard to be so far away from family, but at the same
Mhm.
time, we still wanted to go and explore the country, and we drove across the U.S. from Michigan to Oregon by way of New Mexico and did a whole circuitous route to get up to the Northwest in the first place, and just seeing the beauty of this country and
Mhm.
how it's like, I mean, it's like 5 or 10 different countries worth of different geography and cultures. And, there's so much to explore. We wanted to get more of that. So we ended up leaving our full-time jobs in Portland. And I was teaching edible landscaping online at the time. That was going to be my
Mhm.
next thing to kind of carry me.
Okay.
Um, and then that fell through 2 weeks after I left my in-person landscape design job. So we moved to Florida from
Okay.
Oregon and had no prospects for jobs, had no idea what we were going to do. Lived with a friend for a little while, but ended up setting up roots in this little town called Englewood. And I just had these amazing experiences there, like the local farmers market and going to the shore and just
Mhm.
really, really immersing in the natural world in Florida, which I didn't know really existed because most people talk about golf courses and
Yes.
Orlando and whatever. But I was really struck by that, and it reminded me a lot of my hometown, with like the farmers market and the beautiful river, the water. So there were these kind of seeds coming up in my mind of, I really do want to be that aspect of wanting to be closer to family was still there for me, and really starting to feel when I visited Minnesota again, like there's something here, there's something really inspiring for me creatively and musically. So during this whole time of being a landscape designer, I used to talk about myself as a frustrated musician because I started out, when I first left high school, I just wanted to make music. I didn't I didn't have an interest in going to college. It was expected of me and my family, and I'm very privileged to have that expectation and ability. So I did go to college um, for for the ability to learn more about nature, which has then fed my creativity even more. But ultimately, the reason why I came back to Minnesota was that, being by family is amazing and I love this town, but I also had never really explored what about a career in music? What about focusing on this and finishing the songs that I'm dreaming up in I wake
Mm-hmm.
up from my sleep with songs in my head all the time. And so I had a few friends from high school back here, and in the past few years we've had a band, and we've gotten some amazing stuff going here in the Twin Cities, which is shut down now with the pandemic, but still
Yes.
working on our music. So in a very long-winded answer, I felt like I saw enough of the country to realize that I could love where I live wherever I am, because there's always something interesting to explore. There's always cool people. But if I'm really gonna have for my idea of what a life of I needed some stability. Like I needed some sense of
Mm-hmm.
grounding and knowing that, like, okay, these relationships that I'm building, I'm not just going to move in 2 years and have to start over all over again.
Mm-hmm.
Cuz like I'm sure you found that, like you live in a new place, you start to become part of the community after probably a couple years. And
Yes.
then it starts to feel really amazing, and I was just thinking, what if I was in place for like 20 years?
Yeah.
20 years of adult life and not confuse teenage growing up, in high school and stuff. That's just such a different time of life, but
Let me
it's
ask you
allowed
this,
me.
Pete.
Yeah.
How did you combine, or how have you decided to combine your love of edible landscape designing and your musical aspirations?
hmm yeah, it felt I was getting in my own way for a long time because I felt like I can only do one or the other things.
Okay.
I only have so much time. Only one of these can be done properly in terms of bringing it to full fruition.
Mm-hmm.
But it was so interesting because when I first moved back to Minnesota, I got a job with another business as a landscape designer. And that gave me stability to just kind of figure out, like, what is the next step for me? Because I have this very entrepreneurial urge within me. And I always am seeking this sense of freedom of just being able to wake up and stroll out the front door and live my
Mm-hmm.
life. And that's just, I'm making a living by just being me rather than having to report to a certain place. Um, I found that as I did a better job and was more engaged and found inspiration in the landscape design,
Mm-hmm.
it freed me up so much. I think really at the root level emotionally, to be able to explore and expand my own musical abilities and really ability to follow through and say finish a song, or have the self compassion and self love to be able to go through the intense process of learning how to record a song properly so it sounds good, or playing live and getting the band together and being patient with that whole process. But coming back to your intro that you gave of me of, coming back and growing my own food, that's always been something that my mom and I have done together. And so I have a vegetable garden with them at their place. And whenever I'm in the garden, I can lose myself. Like I can lose whatever external noise, static, if I'm worrying about something. And actually, my mom told me that my great grandmother would say that the garden was the only place that it was just it was her happy place where she could just
Mm.
completely let go of everything just naturally and not have to try to shed layers or anything. It just happens in the garden. And I find that when I'm in the garden, I'll suddenly become aware that I'm humming something,
Mm-hmm.
and that tune that I'm humming isn't a song that's been written before. Um, so, combining the edible landscape design and the music, it's really that the world of plants, and I think their generosity when working with edible plants and the food that they provide, and that exchange. it's that co-creation that brings something more tangible to the creative process for me,
Mm-hmm.
um, that led me to be able to see, to find that joy in the musical creative process, which, since there isn't as much that's physically created with music, it's not like I can lay out, it's not the same as a garden. Like if I write a song, it might be on a recording and you can
Mm-hmm.
hear it, but I can't like set it out in the yard or in a room and look at the song.
I got you.
Um, so it allowed me to see that, I think from an emotional side, um, to see through feeling of what does it actually feel like to complete something and co-create. And since I'm a very spiritual person, I was able to translate that into the songwriting process and bringing that much more joy through, and just writing songs and sharing them for the sake of doing so, rather than putting pressure on it to be a career, which kept me from doing music for a long time because I might have self-doubt or whatever.
That
So
makes sense. Let me ask you this, because I can see now that you've had time to think about how you can combine your edible landscape designs and your music. And
mhm.
I'm thrilled to know that at the end of this, we're going to give you the opportunity to play some of your music. But before we get to that, Pete, what I was wondering was, how do you see the edible landscape design fitting into uh, the way you're building community now, since you're thinking long term? How does that fit into where you're building community, right where you're at right now?
Yeah, that's such an amazing question. And it's something I've been thinking about a lot because when the whole COVID pandemic started and back in March, I had a really serious conversation with a friend, my best friend Darren, who's the lead guitarist in our band.
Hmm.
And we were just talking about like, because he lives in the city, it's like, okay,
Okay.
if things go crazy or whatever happens, what's the game plan? And I was like, you can come up to the farm and we can grow food, whatever. So after that conversation, I went and spent like $100 on seed for vegetables and started growing and starting my own seedlings.
Hmm.
And that precipitated this whole experience this spring and summer of just, I don't think I've ever felt so plugged into a source of like this deeper richness of my life where I am seeing this thing from start to finish that's nourishing me in such a direct way.
Hmm.
And so having a garden as well, like I plant a tomato seed. That's one of 20 tomato seeds that came in a seed packet that cost me like $2.
Right.
That one tomato plant is producing like, let's say 15 or 20 tomatoes. I have so much I can share with others
Okay.
that costs me very little. And so it makes it so easy for me to connect with other people in my community, with neighbors who I might garden with, or just leave some produce for them, or have people over if we're not in a pandemic, have people over for a meal. It makes it so easy for me to share and show people I care about them.
Hmm.
Whereas before I was in this place where I was kind of struggling about, okay, like how do I show somebody else I care for them? I can help them
Hmm.
move or something if they're moving, move boxes, or like I just didn't have that much in the way of financial resources. Just be like, here's a gift for you that I bought, which isn't gonna show somebody, like not everybody speaks that language anyway. But I found that everyone speaks the language of food,
That's
and can
true.
appreciate that delicious fresh produce that doesn't even know it's been picked off the plant yet. It's so fresh. And the care that I've put into it by growing it and nurturing it until that moment when I hand it off to somebody else, or like um, my friends had a baby recently and I made a bunch of pasta sauce and curry and
Hmm.
stuff and froze it and gave it to them. And it was all stuff from the garden or the local farmers market, which I also found that shopping at my local farmers market, I'm blessed to have this beautiful market where organic farmers come every week, and it was probably half the price of what conventional produce is by buying direct from the farmer. And so it just makes it so easy to share what I'm passionate about with others and what's also going to nourish them in a very literal way. So as far as creating community and the edible landscape design, like when I'm working with a client, we might lay out a certain, like a vegetable garden, or,
Hmm.
here's where you can grow fruiting plants, or here's where you can grow medicinal herbs in the forest, stuff like that, and give them ways to connect with nature, to connect with the
Hmm.
place that we live here. And then whatever transpires from that, I know that, I would say, I can only speak for myself, but I would say everybody, if you're out experiencing just that like the expansion of just being outside and not having anything you have to do, and just
Hmm.
appreciating or just listening to birds or feeling the wind or taking a nap, um, it's gonna bring some positive expansion or more sense of understanding about what what is going on within us, around us. And I think it just makes people more present. So there's that aspect of literal nourishment of the food being produced, but there's also this aspect of like taking a nap under a pine tree, and whatever that ripple effect has in my community, I know it's
Hmm.
positive, but it's not direct, right?
Right. Pete, I can tell you're very passionate about what you're doing, so it appears you're doing what you love. And what I'd like to know is, are there any plans to teach classes, bring kids on the farm, or to go online? How have you thought about expanding this ability to connect with community and spread this passion you have for the edible landscaping?
Yeah, oh, that's a great question. Well, one thing that I'm working on with a couple friends right now is a website called gardenguideshop.com. So
Okay.
we're starting to create little guides. We're starting with a microgreens booklet of, here's like the bare bones, here's how to be successful growing your own microgreens at home, which is, you grow a seed for 5 to 7 days, and it's these really potent, nutrient dense greens like broccoli, alfalfa, clover, radish, other things. You can put them on salads, and we're creating recipes and stuff. So we're doing that on the online side, which is very exciting. But I've found that I want to help people be successful growing their own food. So that's one way that I'm working on that side of things. My greatest draw right now is toward just the off-screen world. And so like out
Okay.
on the farm, out in
So
the
actual
community,
hands-on.
hands-on. Yep. Yep. And so with the farm here at the blueberry farm I live on, so I'm kind of a caretaker of this piece of property,
Hmm.
and the farm owner lives here as well. But so I help take care of the blueberries and the horses and fix the fencing and stuff like that. We are a U-pick blueberry farm, so
So
we have
you're
two
having
acres.
tours?
Yeah, yeah. So
Oh,
people come and
great.
pick. Yep, from like early July through mid-August, people come and actually pick organic blueberries. And the kids come out and they get to have that experience of
Mhm.
coming and picking this delicious fresh fruit. So that's one thing that we've already got going on. And I'm also very excited about the elderberry piece, which you mentioned before.
Yes,
And
yes.
so yeah, so as part of the work I've been doing, where I was doing some TV interviews on elderberry, and I've been getting the word out regionally here in the Midwest with some farmer publications, magazines, showing
That's a
people,
very healthy
here's,
berry.
it's amazingly healthy. It's really amazed me at the peer-reviewed articles, the scientific research that's come out showing that elderberry can protect healthy cells from the influenza virus.
Mhm.
It's been shown to prevent promotion of cancer cells, and also can help people who are diabetic and have issues with high blood sugar, hyperglycemia. And that's just a few of the benefits. And I'm so impressed with the plant in general.
I had another question, Pete, while we were talking about, because when I first heard edible landscape designer, I was trying to think of, I thought personally, tomatoes, lettuce, peppers. But I also
Okay.
had another interest, my own personal. I have three guinea pigs. My friend has rabbits, and we thought, I wonder. if Pete could design an edible garden for our pets. Have you ever done that?
I've done it for chickens
Okay.
and ducks. So
Okay.
there's a start there. And I don't know exactly what, guinea pigs eat. And you said your friend
Lettuce.
has lettuce though?
They
Lettuce?
have rabbits. And the
Yeah,
guinea
so
pigs eat lettuce, cilantro, things of that nature. And I always wanted to build something in my yard that would allow me to take them out safely in a little greenhouse
mm,
type environment. And I
mm,
thought that would be something interesting. And it's just another avenue down the road for you to think about pet gardens.
I'm writing it down, yeah. Well, that's it's totally doable. And I think the main thing with creating gardens for pets like that, where the pet is herbivorous and it's going to
Hmm.
eat the plants, is being able to control how much of the plant the pet has access to at one time, so it
Hmm.
doesn't mow the whole thing down or tear up the whole planting. And
Right.
so it's a little bit different then, where maybe somebody, you might have raised beds or you might have long pots in a greenhouse that have the lettuce and cilantro and other things growing,
Hmm.
where you can even extend the season if you live in a colder place and have that lettuce and other things growing, have an extra month in the spring and the fall, so you have an even longer growing season. But something where there's a little place for them to sit and play and
Right.
hang out, if they're guinea pigs, for example.
Just a little munching area for
And
them,
then
I
you
thought
could,
about.
yeah, and then you could snip off a few pieces and leaves and have that, rather than them being able to tear up the whole planting at
Right.
once. I don't think
Hmm.
that would be super sustainable. but, but the rabbit thing is amazing. So rabbits, I've never kept rabbits myself, but I have friends who have an edible landscape in St. Louis, Missouri, and they have a couple big rabbits, and they actually live in a den under their back porch.
Oh, how
So
cool
the
is that?
rabbits, yeah, they dug a hole under their back porch. The rabbits made it themselves, and they just live in this den. So it's kind of like this natural habitat. But they
Mhm,
come out, and there's certain plants that my friend Matt will prune, and then he'll throw the rabbits the cuttings. And
mhm,
there's a lot of different things, or like compost, like the guinea pigs
mhm,
too. You
mhm,
you cut up a cabbage maybe, and you have
mhm,
the cabbage core, carrot tops, like other stuff like that, as long as the animal can actually have it. I'm not an expert in
mhm.
what they can and can't eat, but
Right.
compost, and then every animal has to poop, and that's fertile manure
Yeah.
to be able to spread, or put in the compost pile or whatnot, and have that recycled nutrients for the soil in the garden too, because that's a really important part of it, is closing that loop, so
Mhm.
that we can also produce amount of stuff that's going to landfill, or we don't have to buy as much fertilizer too.
Well, before we move on to the music, I want to ask you, as you have made this shift from city living to living on a farm, how has that impacted your stress levels?
Phew, okay, that's cool. That's so interesting. I really enjoy living in the city. Um, but I found the main thing for me was that I need a lot of space to grow food. It's just part of who I am. And so, there were places I lived where I had raised beds, or I had a community garden, and that was really cool. But I grew up in the country too. And I will say that I think the biggest stress difference for me, or like mental health difference, is not having cars passing by, not having all of this stimulating motion and sound that I can't control.
Mhm.
Um, that's been big for me. I'm definitely the type of person where I need connection with other people. I need there's a really vibrant downtown here where I live, and so I like having that. I like how denser collections of people and activity stir up my energy, so I'm
Mhm.
not getting stagnant, or like I can get out of any rut easily, or like being in the garden, being downtown, people watching, and then the fodder that brings for songwriting. All this is very positive. I think it has been a positive shift for me in my mental emotional health to be out in the country on a farm.
Mhm.
um, But I will say, there's other aspects to living remotely that are a little bit different. Like, I have to be careful. I meditate every day, and
Okay.
that's still really important to me. I have to be careful to not let all the farm chores weigh on me mentally,
Mhm.
that I have to do.
Yeah.
Um, but I have found that this sense of stability and security that being able to grow more of my own food gives me, and being able to go out back and listen to the owls at 2 in the morning if I wake up in the middle of the night. Those are the types of things where there are these experiences that they don't cost, if you have a
Mhm.
piece of property, they don't cost much or anything to just be out and have those experiences, but they have made the biggest difference in my life. And this aspect of hitting financial rock bottom last winter,
Mhm.
where being a landscape designer, my business was pretty new and I didn't realize how much it drops off in the winter,
Right.
or how tricky that would be. I started to turn more toward experiences that don't cost anything out of necessity, and found that those were also the most nourishing for me. Um, but yeah, there's something about being surrounded by the trees and the prairie and all the wildlife here. That's been the biggest shift for me, and of course, a pretty obvious one. There's not as much green in a lot of cities, especially depending on where somebody lives or where they are able to live because of their means.
Well, Pete, if you were to give someone a piece of advice that was thinking about making the shift that you've made out to the farm, what would you tell them to consider before they made this transition?
That's a huge one, and I just helped a friend this past week who's looking at buying an apple orchard, and it's a great idea, right? To be
Mm-hmm.
a blueberry farmer, or be have a horse farm, or whatever it may be, whatever the life transition might be, even if it's just changing jobs. What do you want your daily life to look and feel and be like? Because we do have a lot of control in how our daily life feels in terms of the perspective that we bring to it,
Mm-hmm.
and just learning to be happy with what is, because we are always, I believe, surrounded with what we actually need. But it's really easy to romanticize farm life.
Mm-hmm.
It's not easy,
Yeah.
but done the right way, and done in a way where community is being, I think life in general, done in a way where community is one of the foremost focuses of our life,
Mm-hmm.
and building that social capital with people, like helping a friend out, and just having that connection. I think it really comes down to, like, who do I want in my life? What types of people? What are their values? And is where I'm living right now aligning with that? Is where I'm living right now bringing me the opportunities to have those experiences on a daily basis of, if I want to be outside working with plants all day,
Mm-hmm.
living in a very urban place is not as conducive to that, for sure, as, say, living on a farm or working on a farm 1 day a week, because it doesn't necessarily have to be a whole big move. But I would say, like, what do you want in your life on a daily basis and weekly basis? And what is, this is also through experimentation, you find what is your necessary dose of that
Mm-hmm.
to get the amount that you need. It might not be moving out to a farm permanently. It might be, like I said, going once a week, or making an effort to go camping one weekend a month,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. Because it's it's all so dynamic for each person.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't have to be a giant shift to get what you need.
Well, Pete, I'll ask you this. You've made a big change because of the pandemic and your desire to change the way you live. If you could just have one word to describe your life right now, what would that one word be?
Peace.
Well, with that, Pete, you can't ask for anything more. And I'd like to thank you for being on Talk to Me.
This has been awesome, Brenda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We've been talking about your edible landscape, but I don't want you to leave without us talking about your music. And I was hoping you could share a little bit about that and then share some of your music with us if you don't mind.
I would absolutely love to do that, Brenda.
Okay. So tell me about your band and what y'all are up to, and then do what you do.
Awesome. Yeah, so I I'm an interesting musical case because I wake up with songs in my head all the time.
Mhm.
Um, I had a there's this. I think my favorite story is that I was camping out in a tent outside here at the farm, and I woke up at like 5 in the morning, just naturally, and I had been having a dream where Cat Stevens, the musician, was singing me a song, and it's taken me a while to develop the skill of being able to realize that the songs that come to me, like I have a lot of people singing songs to me in my dreams lately, and
Mhm.
now I know that those aren't songs that exist yet.
Oh.
But I used to think like, oh, that song's catchy, or that sounds
Mhm.
like it's already a song. I'll just go back to sleep.
Mhm.
Now I'm able to be like, oh no, let's go record that. And um, so Cat Stevens was singing me this song, and I almost fell back asleep, in which case I totally would have forgotten it because these things are very
Mhm.
fleeting. But I decided to wake up and figure out, like, start playing a couple notes on the guitar. Um, in a lot of the recordings that I do on my phone or this other little thing I have, it might be 2 in the morning, and I'm like, I'm playing a couple notes on the guitar. I'm kind of like very froggy voice, like kind
Mhm.
of mumbling words, and you'll hear yawns and stuff in these little demos that I make. It's super funny because I'm like half awake, but there's also a magic in being half awake, in that
Right.
there's some deeper connection to whatever that source of creativity is. And so the song
Mhm.
that I will play today is actually the song that resulted from that,
Okay.
whatever idea Cat Stevens was sharing with me,
Yeah.
he's
Well.
known now as Yusuf Islam. But um, yeah, I've realized that that is a very rare experience, to have people
Mhm.
sing you songs in your sleep that aren't that don't exist yet. And I think that's one reason why I knew that for whatever happens, regardless of where this my music career goes,
Mhm.
I know that I this is a quote that Wayne Dyer took from somewhere, the spiritual teacher. He said, "Don't die with your music still in you."
Yeah,
I,
absolutely
I
not.
just I just want it out there. I want it.
Mhm.
I want to be able to listen to it, and if anyone's helped by it, that's amazing.
That's
Um,
good.
so that precipitated starting this band up again with my high school friends and having them around. It's really wild to me how, like, you see people on TV who are musicians or listening to other groups, and it's like, oh yeah, those are really they're really special people who are
Mhm.
very talented. It's a different thing for me to have this journey into this experience of realizing that the three friends I'm surrounded with in my band, who come over to the farm when we're able to meet inside, and um, who I just hang out with and text with on a daily, weekly basis, it seems so normal to me and so
Mhm.
run of the mill. It's my life and they're my friends. But I've
Right.
realized I've given myself the space and perspective to realize how special they are and how talented they are,
Mhm.
and how that translates to how special and talented I am. Because that's been a really long journey. I had a lot of what I would call toxic doubt for a long time that kept me from expressing myself musically.
Mhm.
Um, so it's been a cool journey, and those dreams, and I guess Yusuf Islam, have had a lot to do with kind of cracking that shell open.
That makes sense. So let's hear the music.
This guitar came into my life very randomly.
Mhm.
My best friend's brother-in-law started a relationship with a woman that he'd known for a long time, but he followed her out to North Carolina from Minnesota just a few months ago. And so he was moving out there, and he's a really active, like, keyboardist musician,
Mhm.
but he had all these awesome guitars and like a huge, beautiful djembe hand drum. And he
Mhm.
just told Darren, my friend, that he was like, "Hey, dude, you should take these. Like, just take them. You're
Wow.
gonna use them more than I will." And so Darren was just like, "Hey, Pete, you should start playing this 12-string guitar because I'm a
Mhm.
rhythm guitarist mostly anyway."
Mhm.
And it led to me writing all of these songs because of the sound of this instrument is so different. So this thing just fell into my lap, and it's just this beautiful handmade in a small town in Canada.
Yeah.
It's not like a mass-produced guitar. I feel so fortunate.
Very cool.
So this is the song that started at 5 a.m. Um, that I guess I can thank Yusuf Islam, Cat Stevens, for the origins of in my dream. And it really encompasses, I feel, what this past year has meant to me of setting roots, sinking roots
Mhm.
in a place, and the rewards that have come from not even really being that active with trying to make things happen in my life, but just kind of sinking and settling in that sense of
Mhm.
peace.
Mhm.
So this is called Sense of Place.
Sense of
I'm gonna
place.
tip it. I'm gonna tip this down so you can see my guitar more.
Ladies and gentlemen, Pete Widin, Sense of Place.
It feels good to plant some seeds today and let them grow away into the unknown. Just let it get better. It looks good to watch the flowers wake into another day. Leave your worries alone. Let go of the tether. It feels good to turn the wheel today and go another way. Drink, drink, drink from the red ripened sun. Get lost in the heather. There's a new breeze blowing through my lungs, and I am the silence breathing out. Unknown feelings from the south, some kind of guidance reaching out, humming deep within my mouth, and I am the quiet speaking out. It looks good to watch the clouds take shape. I'll do it every day, cut the cord to fall. Just roll with the weather. It feels good to sink some roots and stay. Make some sense of place, bring it down home. Let your life come together and take the time to help your neighbor out. Or give a friendly shout you don't even know. It might make you feel better. For too long, too much weight. Let this song relieve you of your burden. Sit it down and sing along. There's a new breeze blowing through my house, and I am the silence breathing out. Unknown feelings from the south, some kind of guidance reaching out, humming deep within my mouth. I am the quiet speaking out.
Very nice. Thank you for sharing that, Pete. That was awesome.
Thank you.
I like that. That was way cool. Well, you are combining music with your love of landscaping, and who could ask for more? And you're at peace. That's a blessing. Thank you,
Absolutely.
Pete, for being on Talk to Me. And I hope to have you back again soon.
Cool, Brenda. Yeah, it's been a pleasure.